As one minister kindly put it, these slums were a hotbed of criminality and non-compliance. Sorry, that was the current Victorian government describing the public housing towers in 2020. Back then, before the towers were actually built, the ministers were saying that the slums were the cesspools of humanity. So how did these cesspools of humanity become a hotbed of criminality and non-compliance?
Housing Commission's first high-rise development.
Through the 60s, 70s and 80s, 44 towers in total were built over these slums. These were part of broader plans to completely redevelop entire suburbs into neat, bland squares of high-rises next to planned multi-lane freeways, which you can somewhat see materializing here on Hoddle Street. While the slums were a huge problem, the slum clearances and construction of the towers actually displaced most of the people the government sought to house. Only a small portion of those displaced by the clearances were resettled into their communities.
And if we let this freeway go through, it's going to go through the whole of Glebe and Redfern and Chippendale. And the people on low incomes who can't afford to buy their own homes are going to be forced out further and further into the outer suburbs.
It was very much a plan dreamt up by the political class, which very conveniently benefited their mates in real estate. And even for the residents, life wasn't particularly stellar. To put it mildly, the stock management practices of the Housing Commission in the 60s and 70s were appalling. Maintenance standards were barely adequate, and there was no systematic process of periodic renovation and upgrading of the older stock. Very little was spent on estate improvement and upgrading works over a 20-year period, with the result that there was an enormous legacy of housing neglect, particularly on the estates.